Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to Revelations with Rowena. That's not too bad given that I am recovering from daycare crud. I'm Dr. Rowena Winkler, and after a bit of a hiatus for the summer vacation, we are back in full swing, and I am so excited to kick things off with a wonderful guest. Dr. A is here to talk to us about her work that she does in integrating all the various aspects of her gifts and talents into a beautiful offering for women. So, Dr. A, thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
You are the second person who sang back to me. I think we've had over 30 shows at this point, and you are number two. So I love it. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, you're welcome. I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me to come on and just have a great conversation, about the opportunities coming up for women and the crazy time that we're living in.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm sure we're going to get into what you mean by that. But as I always kick off every conversation, tell us a little bit about who you are and where have you gotten to where you're doing what you're doing today.
Oh, great. Okay. So, let's see. I, like you, am a mom. I'm a mom of 3 adult kids and a number of dogs and still have a husband. So God bless him. but so basically, my background's in theater and in teaching at the college level. And when I went into perimenopause and the midlife shift, I went back to school and got my master's and Ph.D. Started my journey at 55, got my Ph.D. at I think I was 61 in 2019 and just turned 64. Yay me. And yeah, so when I was doing my dissertation and my studies, I studied what's called mythological studies with an emphasis in depth, as in DEPTH, psychology. And that's Jungian psychology and the psychology of dreams and the collective unconscious. And so when I was going to school, I had originally started out at another school to get a master's in directing for television. And while I was doing research for film, I found Pacifica Graduate Institute and I never looked back. And so what I do now is I'm a women's midlife and perimenopause and menopause coach. And I use mythology and the great tales and depth psychology and all of the proven methods that depth psychology uses to help women recreate themselves in midlife, right? After they've been spending, 20, 30 years, like on a career, on a family, raising children, taking care of their parents, mothering their friends, siblings, whatever, those busy householder years, and getting then to the menopause and midlife period and saying, okay, now it's my turn. And so I help women recreate themselves and decide, okay, what is it that I want to do now and how am I going to get there? And so that's what I do.
I love that. I remember when Dr. A and I had our conversation before going live, I was just so enthralled by, first of all, our shared theater background and then the mythology piece, just as a fellow storyteller and story sharer, that just really resonated with me. And I'm sure it resonates with a lot of folks. Can you speak to how, the clients that you work with is analogous to mythology and stories? Like, how does that play? How do you interweave all of those elements in the work that you do?
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, so my coaching is a little different than a traditional life coach. And so what I do when I work with women is we take a look at where you are now, right? We take a really good look at where you are now, which I call charting your position, right? And figuring out what's going on, what your biggest challenges are, that kind of thing. That's not unusual for coaching. Then we say, okay, well, how do we get here? And we look back and we say, okay, how do we get here? And I think of midlife as a mountaintop, right? And sort of metaphorically, I use a lot of metaphor work. And so we look back at where we came from and we can see the path that we walked and the hills that we climbed and how we got here. Yeah. And that includes, acknowledging our personal story, our personal myth, right? Looking at our lives and the different chapters of our lives as chapters in a story, looking at it from a bigger overview. Instead of getting caught in the tiny details, we say, okay, let's look at the overview of this as a narrative, as a story, a personal narrative. And then we say, okay, well, based on who you are and where you're from and what you're dealing with,
Mm.
what great tales, fairy tales, folk tales, mythologies, right, have stories in it with characters that have gone through what you're going through. Because in our lives, when we're in big periods of transition and big change, generally speaking, I would say it's true of every major shift in our lives,
Yeah.
that what we're experiencing is a very personal experience of a universal rite of passage.
Mm.
And myths are stories that never happened but are always true.
Mm.
And so there is a myth or a great tale, right, which came out of the psychology of the people of the times, right, to deal with almost every human circumstance. And so by looking at the mythological tales that have to do with or that relate to empty nest or children growing up and moving away or
Mhm.
aging or the death of loved ones or
Mhm.
the loss of a sense of self or abandonment or dot 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 whatever issues that we're dealing with um, at this time of our lives, there's almost always a myth or a great tale that relates exactly to what you're going through. And so what we do is we use those tales to crack open what you're experiencing, to see it from a mythological perspective, which is a much bigger perspective.
Yes,
And
yes.
then also to bring it back down and say, okay, now how can you relate to this story? How can you relate to this myth? And when you realize that what you're in what you're experiencing, that you're not alone,
Yes.
that that women from the beginning of time, for the most part, have had the same experiences, and that you're part of this great ever unfolding story, it gives you a whole different perspective on what you're going through. And so then eventually through the coaching process, then we say, okay, what is your goal, right? And all right, now we put together an actionable plan, not just a lot of airy fairy ideas, but an
Mhm.
actionable plan of how are you going to get there, right? What are the actual steps you're going to take and how are you going to get there? So it's a deeper um, depth psychological process of coaching than say the traditional life coaching, where you just take the different aspects of your life and you say, okay, well, what's going on in these different divisions of your life and how can we improve this or how can we change that? It's a little bit deeper. I would say it's more soul oriented. uh,
Yes.
of course, psyche means soul, right, from the ancient Greek. I mean, it also means butterfly, so there you go. But so
Full.
yeah, we look at everything from the three transitions that women go through from this period of life. My clients generally range from about the early to mid 40s to about
Mhm.
70,
Mm.
which is a life stage that I call regency. And it's interesting because, Rowena, our generation and the women just before us, so we start with boomers, late boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, all the women coming up behind us. We're the first generations of women in the history of humanity to live past menopause as a cohort.
Mm.
That's it, over 300,000 years. There have always been individual women who've lived past menopause,
Sure.
or maybe certain small aspects of some cultures of women who've lived longer. You have the old wise woman or the village witch or whatever you want, the great
Mhm.
great
Mhm.
grandmother, whatever. But never has an entire generation of women lived past menopause. In 1900, um, white women were dead statistically by 51, and women of color by the age of 43.
Wow.
So in 120 years, our lifespan has expanded either by one third or more than half, depending on your ethnicity, right? And
Wow.
so we're living into a life stage for which there are no models, no maps, no way showers. We're groundbreakers.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I'm just really passionate about helping women find a way to kind of move through these spaces, because we go through a physical transformation, a psychological transformation,
Mhm. Mhm.
with midlife, and of course the physical is perimenopause and menopause, and these two together create a spiritual shift, right, in our psyches. So it's a triple transformation, and it's really powerful. I mean, women are, this generation, we're so powerful, but we haven't claimed our power as a people group yet.
Mm.
We control over 85% of all the discretionary spending in the US economy, everything from homes to clothes to food to vacations to cars, whatever things you get to decide, right? What you're going to buy. We're one of the first generations or cohorts of women who may stand to inherit twice, once from our families, and I mean our parents, and once from our husbands or partners. And not everyone is in that position, I understand, but it
Sure.
is a growing statistic.
Right.
So we're going to be one of the wealthiest cohorts of women in the history of humanity. And also, we're a huge political and cultural power,
Mm.
right? Right now, there's over 78 million US women over 45. And by 2030, there'll be over 87 million of us.
Wow.
So if we claim our power, we could change a lot of things, like in 2 or 3 election cycles, right? So
Absolutely.
I'm just passionate. I spend so much time with my clients. I don't have as much time maybe to be out in politically active for people in my community as I was in the past. But I'm just really so pumped and passionate about just letting women know that, Regency 45 to 70, it's our new power years.
Mhm.
No other women in the history of humanity have had it. It's a gift. And so I love what I do, and I love helping women recreate themselves, and I also, going back to what you had said about how we first talked, I love the fact that you abandoned academia as I did. Get out in the field and help
Yes,
people.
yes. I mean, goodness, gosh, so many things, Dr. A. It's just, whew, first of all, just, I know you mentioned that you're not as active politically, but you are creating your own path in terms of impact in empowering these women. It's just so powerful. And I love the framework that you use by reminding us, yeah, these myths, these stories are universal. Because I think oftentimes for us, especially as women, as we mentioned, right, when we're moms and we're doing all these things, we have the double shift, the triple shift. We don't get a chance to take a step back and be like, wait a second, I'm not the only one that's going through this, and I can find solidarity with my sisters who are going through the same thing. So I think that's just super powerful to frame that up and to provide that context. And then also just, I mean, just thinking about myself as a media consumer, right? We see these stories and we see these journeys that folks go through, and it resonates with us. So the fact that you tie that into your coaching is amazing. It's awesome. And just the how you gave us the look a look at how, the our aging population and the opportunity for women in this age group, just the sheer power, not only monetarily, but just, political power, spiritual
Cultural. Yep.
power, so much opportunity there. And you mentioned that you have the transformation that is just multifold, which is brilliant. So my question for you is, I'm sure that you're aware of how in the United States, I can't speak for other countries, but in the US, right, we our family unit has become a bit disjointed. You know what I mean? Like, we've moved away from everyone living in the same neighborhood or even in the same household.
Mhm.
And especially grandmothers and mothers are living further away, and there's, folks see the older women in our lives a different way. Like, how do you contend with that shift? I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on that.
That's very interesting because culturally, speaking of the shift away from the extended nuclear family,
Hmm.
that really started after World War II. And so the idea of, the Waltons, or the neighborhood that had, 4 or 5 walk-ups, and all the families were, related, and it took, and you had a village to raise your children,
Right.
because you had the aunties or the grandmothers or the
Yes.
uncles or whoever. And so when we moved away from that extended family to the nuclear family, right, a lot of things, broke down. It's kind of the same way that the women that used to go to the well, the stories out in different cultures, where the women that used to go to the well to draw the water and wash the clothes and do those things, and had that sort of tribal camaraderie, right?
Mhm.
when when they no longer did that, and they all, had machines, or culture changed, there was a disconnect, and there wasn't that sense of community. And I think it was the same way in terms of raising our children. And it's a documented fact in
Yes.
medical research that once women were separated from their extended family and their support systems of their mothers and their aunts and their sisters and those kind of things, that the 1950s was the rise of the happy pill, where everybody was on Valium because everybody was miserable.
Man.
They were stuck at home without community. So, I think culturally, I think things are shifting. The mainstream media still would like to ignore older women, though we are making some progress in that, in film, and in
Mhm.
some media, and in some advertising, is now realizing that we're a huge group. And so we have money to spend, and if they market to us, then that's a good thing for them. But beyond that, I think it's been so indoctrinated and so deeply embedded in patriarchal culture for thousands of years, that a woman's value is in her fertility and in her ability to raise children and keep the family line going. That since suffrage, again, the turn of the 20th century in 1900, with suffrage, with women's right to vote, with the 60s, with the women's spirituality movement, the goddess movement, all these different movements,
Mhm.
and the feminist movement, and all the different iterations of that.
Mhm.
We see culture pushing back, women push forward, culture pushes back, women push forward, culture pushes back. Right now, culture's pushing back, right, on some of women's rights. Um, and I think that we are just going to have to keep moving forward, and we're going to women have to support women. Women should hire women, right? Women should, if you can, vote for women. And I think we need to um, just really look at unpacking or diffusing some of these tropes or some of these stereotypes that are out there having to do with aging women, and the only way to do that really is to live it. And like I said, there are no models, there are no maps. That's why this is such new territory. It's why things become so, you look at anything from social media, from the far left to the far right. It doesn't matter where you sit. Women's rights, women's activism, women's creativity, women's careers, women's decisions are causing uproar. And men's decisions, men's careers, these things don't cause uproar, because we're the fish swimming in the water, and the water is the patriarchal culture. And it's not, there's no blame for it. It's not something to blame someone for. It's something that's just the reality of what we live in. And so if it took 2,500 years to build culture into a strictly matriarchal form, it's going to take a long time to transform it into something that's a little more egalitarian.
Mm.
But I think that in terms of how we're going to support each other as women of different generations, I think each of us has to decide how we can do that, what we're willing to do, what we want to do.
Mm.
Um, everything from healthcare. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. I have clients right now who are really sandwiched between, caring for rebounding college grads and caring for ailing adults. And so,
Yeah.
they're in the middle of that. And so they're kind of stuck in that dual caregiver role while wanting to recreate themselves. I think that the only thing we could do is encourage each other
Mhm.
to find, the ways to express support for the women in our lives and the women who really are trying to go out there and make a difference.
So, what would you say to clients or to just women in general who feel the call to do more and to be a change maker, but maybe fear or the patriarchy, capital, whatever the system is, whether that's internal, external, getting in the way. How do you motivate those women to go for it?
Well, it would depend on what it is they're trying to go for,
Mhm.
I mean, are we talking about some things that are internal shifts in perspective, or are we talking about running for office, starting a business, getting a divorce, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Um, it just depends on what it is that shift, and I would say I would never encourage someone to blow up their life without having a plan for how to land, right?
Mhm.
Or at least some idea of where they want to land. I
Sure.
mean, certainly people, men and women, all people can get into situations that are no longer tenable in their lives, right? And certainly then change has to happen. And sometimes change has to happen, and we just have to have a hard scrabble to figure out something new. But if you want to try something new, if you're feeling the urge to do something new, to create something new, to change your career, to get involved politically, to do whatever it is you want to do, I'd say, start take one step at a time. You know, I don't know that I would encourage somebody to jump off the cliff of whatever it is they want to do. It depends on the individual, but there are all kinds of support organizations like Run for Something, if you
Mhm.
wanted to get involved politically, or there are political organizations in every city and I would imagine a town that has a dog catcher or a city council or
Mhm.
or a school board. I mean, if you want to get involved in that, go out and join some organizations and find out what's going on. Find out where you can fit in, right? If what you want to do is, if you have an idea or you just want to get people together, there's all kinds of free platforms and
Right.
places where you can put together meetups, or where you can get on Revel, or you can do what you're doing, right, to inspire people to take that step, to believe in themselves, to say, okay, if Regency is real and I have this opportunity, what do I want to do with it, right?
Yeah,
And that's not,
absolutely.
yeah, and that's not to say that if you decide that you want to work in your garden and babysit for your grandchildren and read to them and help them grow up to be sturdy, solid citizens, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic,
Right.
right?
Right. No, I think that's a thank you for bringing that up because yeah, not everyone needs to be a public facing political figure or to run their own business. It's in the day
Exactly.
to day and how if you are a mother raising your children and grandchildren and how to make the most of every moment. I think that's really beautiful. I just wanted to bring up, the seven realms of change. I want to know more about this. What is that? Tell us
The,
about that.
the seven realms of change. Okay, so this is uh, a, um, a way of looking at
Hmm.
those three transformations that we go through, right? The physical, the psychological, and the spiritual.
Ah,
And
I see.
so looking at the seven realms of change, what is it that's going to change in our lives, how we view our lives, how we view ourselves, how we view whatever? And so this is a journal, right, that shows you the
Oh,
seven realms of
beautiful.
change, right? And it's part of a class that is going to be launching, a group class that's going to be launching after the first of the year, that's actually called the Seven Realms of Change and the seven goddesses who rule them. And so this journal comes with it. It's just something that you get to the mail, and it helps you work through the changes that you're going through over an entire year. The class only lasts, the formal class is a 9-week class, and then of
Mhm.
course there's other platforms where you can meet and stay connected with your cohort, that kind of thing. But the seven
Mhm.
realms of change, basically, that we go through are changing roles, are changing self-image, are changing feelings,
Mhm.
are changing body, are changing priorities, are changing needs, and are changing goals, right? And these are all involved in that 3-stage shift that women go through. And some women have more trouble with the perimenopause, menopause shift. They may have more issues with the physical. Other women may have more issues with the psychological, which is the midlife shift. And what a lot of people don't realize is that the midlife shift as a life stage shift is pre-programmed into the human psyche. So unless, just like menopause is pre-programmed into the body. So unless you're going through your life completely unconsciously or totally conscious, like an like a Buddha, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, these shifts, this midlife shift is going to happen, and it's going to um, influence the way you think about yourself and your life. And the way I can explain it best is some people, some of my clients say, like, they woke up one day and they said, "Oh my God, is this it? Like, was I at the bus station when my ship came in? Because like, is it?" Or they say, "You know what? Everything that seems so important to me and so meaningful to me just doesn't do it for me anymore. I
Yeah.
don't, I have such a great life. Why am I not happy?
Mm.
Like, I have everything that everybody wants, but somehow I feel, that something's missing, or, that kind of like that midlife ennui of, it can also be finally realizing that you're mortal, right?
Mm.
There are not going to be unlimited do-overs in
Yeah.
your life, right?
Yeah.
You're going
Yeah.
to get to a certain point and there are unlimited do-overs, and you get to a point where, no matter how much you exercise, no matter how well you eat, no matter how much you meditate, um, everyone ages, right? And
Mhm.
you can age healthily and you can age the best you can for yourself, because once again, it's an individual experience. It's an individual experience of a universal human rite of passage, which is
Mhm.
aging, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so midlife is that psychological passage. So, um, yeah, some women have more trouble with that. Some women have more trouble with the physical. And then when the two come together, I'd say it's like our lives are like a tapestry, right? It's
Mhm.
like the warp and the weft, right? Okay,
Mhm.
of the loom. And it's like when you pull on one thread, you snag the other. You can't separate the three,
Mhm.
right, from the whole. And
Mhm.
so these two together then bring on the spiritual shift, which is our understanding of who we are, why we are, right?
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
meaning of life, what it is that we want to do, contributing to give back to the collective, what's
Mhm.
important now. So, when all of these things are coming up at once, sometimes it's nice to have a guide, right? To say, here, take my hand. I'll help you across the river, because there's just a lot going on.
Yeah, that is a lot going on, and this course sounds amazing. So we'll all be looking forward to it when it drops in the new year. You mentioned that you said it's tied to goddesses. Can you speak more about
Well,
that?
because of mythology, you see.
Mhm.
So it's tied to the idea of the seven realms of change, right? And the seven goddesses who rule them. So we might think, say, of our changing body and our physical body and our changing um, ideas of our sexuality, or our
Mhm.
feeling about our sexuality, or the issues that we might have having to do with menopause, having to do with our sexual life, right?
Mhm.
So you might say, okay, well, maybe Aphrodite
Right.
is the goddess who might rule over that, right?
Yeah.
But it really depends on each woman, because if you have a woman who maybe um, lived a more independent life,
Mhm.
right? Maybe didn't have children, for example, or maybe is not with a partner, right? Has been a really adventurous solo liver,
Mhm.
right? The goddess that rules her realm of the body might be Artemis.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Fascinating. Okay.
So it depends on the woman, but they're generally, I could say, if we had to say make a general overall metaphoric idea for each realm, I could tell you my ideas for each one. Of course, but I don't want to do that because that's in the class. But
Yeah.
and you could have you can definitely have influences of these archetypes, right? From more than one archetypal goddess at a time,
Yeah,
right?
that's actually my next question is so there can be overlap and you can feel drawn to multiple goddesses as your one being.
Absolutely, as absolutely. And when I talk about these goddesses and their influence, I'm not talking about a, I'm talking about an archetypal force or an archetypal power that has influence in the way that we think or the way that we perceive, that comes up from the unconscious, right? I'm
Yeah.
not talking about an actual being necessarily who's going to appear in your living
Right.
room and say, and say something to. It's the idea of the influence of the instinct, the influence
Yes.
of the collective unconscious, the influence of our past history, right?
Mhm,
Our self
mhm.
assumptions, right? How we feel about ourselves in relationship to our life and who we were when we were growing up and our influences there. And so, there may be one woman who is like say her changing roles might include, where she's moving from being, a caregiver, right, to being an independent business owner, right? So moving forward, it might be Athena, right, who's the
Mm,
goddess of creativity, who's the goddess of um, wisdom, right? All these types of things. Or it might be Hermes, who's the goddess of communication, right? The trickster. So it just depends on what you're doing and where you want to go and how you're feeling at the time as to which archetypal forces are propelling you forward, are influencing you, or are holding you back.
It again goes back to what we started the conversation with it in terms of, you're using these mythological stories and these characters in order to inform how we're going about the day to day and moving forward with those different realms that you mentioned. That's fascinating. I'm
I,
very intrigued.
I think one of the most powerful things that it does is sometimes when we're in a difficult spot in our lives with whatever it is, we tend to focus on it, and it gets and our vision gets very tight and gets very
Yeah.
tunneled on this thing, and we get very small on it and we get very focused on it, and it
Mhm.
tends to like really pull our consciousness in. So by trying to look at it through a mythological metaphor, we break it open and we look at it from a whole different perspective, and it can give you a different methodology of problem solving, and
Yeah.
it can keep you from getting sucked into whatever that black hole of repetitive thinking is over that one issue,
Mm, mm.
right? I don't know if that makes any sense,
Yeah,
but
in terms of problem solving, but it makes a lot of sense for me. I'm a humanities person. My background is in communication, right? I My husband, on the other hand, is the STEM person. So I feel like our my daughter and whoever, whatever future children we have are very well set up for that. But yeah, being able to take this framework and use it in a way that makes sense but is, yeah, I just love that it's story based and that it helps us see the bigger picture and the, as you mentioned, the universality of these things that we go through as human beings, that we're all part of the same journey,
mm-hmm.
that we are not alone in that. And I think it's just really powerful and inspiring.
Well, thank you. I love the work that I do, and I love helping women. So yeah, so
Yeah. That's wonderful. So, okay, so we have the course coming out next year, but
mhm.
in the meantime, how can folks learn more about you, get to know what you offer right now, this instant, because the work that you're doing is absolutely fabulous and certainly unique, something that I haven't heard of in, all the folks that I've talked to, again, as my second person who sang back at me. Yeah, let folks know where to find you.
Yeah. Well, you can always go to my website, which is www.dr Andrea Andrea Slominski Slominski.com, or you could probably just put in Google Dr. A midlife coach and it would probably come up, because my maiden name is Modisette, my married name is Slominski. Nobody can remember how to pronounce them or to spell them, so that's why I go by Dr. A, because it's just easier.
I love that.
Yes.
Make it easy for the folks that want to Google you. No, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. And I'll
I
make
also have a Facebook page. I have an Instagram page. I have a YouTube channel where you can go back and watch some of the Women's Wisdom Village gatherings that I did during COVID, using metaphor and myth to help us understand what we were going through and to give us a little bit of a more lightness of being when we were so either afraid or tired or exhausted from everything that was going on. So yeah, and you can always reach out to me through my website. My email contact is there. Right now, I'm working with private clients one-on-one. I have a 12-week coaching program that's called the Heroine's Path. And that is, I think there's a contact thing on the Heroine's Path. Also, I believe the website has the upcoming Seven Realms of Change page as well. And you can also, on the website, if you go to and you look through the menus, there's a place where you can book a 30-minute free consult with me. So if you want to just kind of get on the Zoom and chat about what's going on in your life and see if you think I'd be a good fit as a coach for you, we can do that too. Some women want to work on one particular issue and don't necessarily want to do a 12-week Heroine's Path program. So, we work that out individually depending on what they want to work on and what their situation is. So, yeah, I have lots of different ways that people can reach out, look for my work. There's a blog on my website. Yeah, so I'm out there, very readily findable.
Perfect. That's wonderful. So I'll make sure to drop all of those links in the show notes so that folks don't have to Google you. They just got to click on those links. Thank you again, Dr. A, for being here and chatting about this really amazing and inspiring work that you do. I for one am going to look forward to seeing how things turn out with the Seven Realms of Change course. And yeah, thank you again. This has been such a fun conversation.
Thank you for having me. And I also want to thank you for the work that you do in supporting and coaching women, and the fact that, you have taken that brave step of leaving the insane and sometimes secure and predictable world of academia to move out into the field and help actual people who are living their lives. And I really am so proud of you for doing that. And thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to chat about what I do. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I love it. From a fellow theater Ph.D. Creative to another. It's been wonderful. So, as I mentioned, folks, I will drop all of Dr. A's links in the show notes so that when you want to reach out to her and learn more about her offerings in the course, you'll be available there. Next week, I'm going to be talking to Angelina's son, who is going to be talking about the redox molecule and the critical role it plays in cellular health. So we're going to go from mythology to more of the science.
Biology. Woo!
To biology. Yeah, mythology to biology. Here we go. It's going to be very fun and exciting. It's something you don't want to miss to learn more about how to take care of your skin and your body. So really focusing on that physical component, and it's going to be a fun time. So until then, have a wonderful weekend ahead and a great week, and we'll be back again, same time, same place. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone. Bye.